I'm Sarah Thompson, 32 years old. And I used to think family was my safe haven until last year's Christmas party shattered that illusion. Picture this: a crowded room, laughter fading, every eye locked on me. I stood up, heart pounding, and announced that I'd married the man I truly love. The silence was deafening. My parents' faces twisted with anger. For years they had told me he wasn't good enough. Not the kind of man who could make a Thompson proud. They constantly compared him to my sister Emily's boyfriend, their so-called golden standard, wealthy, polished, the perfect gentleman. No matter how hard my husband worked, no matter how kind he was, they dismissed him as beneath us. And then that night, my parents leaned forward and spat the words that cut deeper than anything before. "In our eyes, you're already dead." Beside them, my sister smirked, letting out a cruel sneer, her eyes sparkling with contempt as if she had finally won. The words hit like a punch, sharp and merciless, tearing through years of trying to prove myself, of trying to earn their love. The room froze, relatives, friends, all stunned into silence, but I didn't break. I lifted my chin, looked them dead in the eye and said, "Understood." Then I grabbed my coat, took my husband's hand, and walked out into the cold night, never looking back. That moment wasn't just about their cruelty. It was about breaking free from control, from comparisons, from a lifetime of being told I'd never measure up. And what happened next, the life I built, the downfall they faced, proved everything. Months later, when they came knocking, desperate and broken, I was ready with words they'll never forget. Have you ever been told someone you love wasn't good enough? Share your story in the comments. I want to hear how you stood your ground. Growing up in suburban Portland, our house looked perfect from the outside. But inside, my mother, Linda, ruled every corner of my life. From the moment I could choose, she decided for me schools, friends, even which extracurriculars I could join. At 7, I wanted to try soccer, but Mom insisted on piano lessons because they were more refined. I practiced for hours, my fingers aching, only to hear her critique every missed note. "You need to be better, Sarah," she'd say, her voice sharp, leaving no room for argument. My father, Richard, rarely spoke up. He'd nod along, his silence louder than any words, backing Mom's every decision. If I pushed back, he'd mutter, "Listen to your mother," and retreat to his newspaper. Their control felt like a weight, a constant reminder I wasn't enough. My sister Emily was the standard I could never meet. She excelled in school, her report cards lined with perfect grades, and Mom praised her endlessly. "Emily's going places," Mom would say at dinner, her eyes fixed on my sister. I'd sit there, pushing food around my plate, feeling invisible. Emily didn't help. She'd smirk when I struggled with math homework, tossing her hair and saying, "It's not that hard, Sarah." Her taunts stung, but I kept quiet, hoping to avoid another lecture from Mom. Once I brought home a B in English, proud of my effort. Mom scanned the report card, frowned and said, "Why can't you be more like Emily?" I was 12 and those words burned into me. School was my mother's battleground. She picked my classes, vetoed electives like art because they were a waste of time, and demanded I join debate to build character. I hated debate, stumbling over arguments in front of judging eyes. But Mom sat in the audience, her stare pushing me to perform. When I lost a match, she'd lecture me the whole drive home about effort and discipline. "You're embarrassing us," she'd snap. I'd nod, swallowing my frustration, knowing arguing was pointless. My friends weren't mine either. Mom disapproved of kids she deemed bad influences, like my best friend from 5th grade who loved comic books. She forbade me from seeing her, claiming she'd distract me from my studies. I learned to hide my friendships, sneaking phone calls when Mom wasn't around. Emily thrived in this system. She joined the Honor Society, won awards, and soaked up Mom's approval. At family gatherings, relatives fawned over her, asking about her college plans while I stood in the corner, forgotten. Emily loved the attention. She'd interrupt my stories to talk about her latest achievement, her voice loud and confident. "Sarah's just shy," she'd say with a laugh, knowing it cut deeper than that. I tried to compete, staying up late to study, but my efforts never measured up. Once I won a writing contest at school. A small victory I thought might impress Mom. I showed her the certificate, my hands shaking with hope. She glanced at it, shrugged and said, "Emily's essay got published last month." My heart sank and I tucked the certificate away, never mentioning it again. The pressure didn't stop at home. Mom volunteered at school, checking on my teachers, ensuring I stayed on her path. She'd call them weekly, asking about my grades, my behavior, even my posture in class. I felt her eyes everywhere, like I could never escape. Richard's role was quieter, but just as heavy. He'd drive me to activities Mom chose, never asking what I wanted. If I complained, he'd sigh and say, "Your mother knows best." I stopped confiding in him after that. By high school, I was exhausted, juggling Mom's demands and Emily's taunts while trying to carve out some peace of myself. I'd lie awake at night, dreaming of a life where I could choose for myself, where my voice mattered. That dream felt so far away, but it was the spark that kept me going. When I started at the University of Oregon, I tasted freedom for the first time. For years, I'd lived under Mom's rules, every choice shaped by her expectations. Now, in Portland's bustling campus, I could finally breathe. I chose marketing as my major, drawn to its blend of creativity and strategy. My first class, a workshop on branding, felt like a revelation. I spent hours designing mock campaigns, sketching logos, and pitching ideas to classmates. For once, I wasn't chasing someone else's approval. My professor, a sharp woman with a knack for spotting talent, pulled me aside after a presentation. "You've got a spark, Sarah," she said. "Don't let anyone dim it." Her words lit something in me, a drive to build something of my own. Outside class, I explored who I could be. I joined a student advertising club, where I led a project for a local coffee shop. We stayed up late brainstorming slogans over pizza, laughing at our terrible first drafts. I loved the chaos of it, the chance to create without Mom hovering. But freedom came with a price. Mom called weekly, questioning my major. "Marketing's not a real career," she'd snap over the phone. "You should switch to something stable like Emily did." I'd grip the receiver, forcing a calm reply, but her words gnawed at me. Dad stayed out of it as usual, leaving me to face her alone. Emily, now in law school, would chime in during family calls, boasting about her internships. "You're still playing with posters," she'd say, her tone dripping with superiority. I brushed it off, determined to prove them wrong. One spring afternoon, my car broke down on a quiet Portland street. I pulled into a nearby garage, frustrated and late for a group project. That's when I met my boyfriend, James Carter. He was leaning over an engine, tools scattered around him, his hands stained with grease. "Let's take a look," he said, his voice calm and steady. I watched him work, methodical and focused, explaining the issue without a hint of condescension. Most guys would have brushed me off, but James listened, answering my questions with patience. We talked for an hour while he fixed the car, swapping stories about music and late-night drives. His laugh was warm, and his confidence wasn't loud or forced. It was real. I left the garage with a working car and his number, my heart lighter than it had been in years. James and I started seeing each other first as friends, then something more. He'd pick me up after class and we'd grab burgers at a diner near campus. He told me about his job as a car mechanic, how he loved solving problems with his hands. I admired his pride in his work, so different from the polished ambition Mom and Emily valued. With James, I didn't have to perform. He'd listen when I ranted about a tough project or Mom's latest critique. Never judging, always steady. "You're enough, Sarah," he'd say, squeezing my hand. Those words carried me through long nights of studying and self-doubt. We'd spend weekends exploring Portland, driving to quiet parks or catching live bands downtown. For the first time, I felt seen not as a project to fix but as me. Balancing school and James wasn't always easy. I was juggling deadlines, club meetings, and part-time shifts at a bookstore to cover expenses. Mom's calls grew sharper, her questions more pointed. "Who are you spending time with?" she'd demand. I'd dodge, saying I was busy with school, but she'd push, hinting I was wasting my potential. Emily would text, asking why I wasn't home for family dinners, her messages laced with judgment. "Too busy with your little hobbies," she'd write. I ignored her, focusing on my goals. I landed a summer internship at a local ad agency, crafting social media campaigns for small businesses. The work was thrilling, but every step forward came with a tug backward. Mom wanted me to visit more, to check in. Dad, when he bothered to call, echoed her, saying, "Don't drift too far, Sarah." Their voices lingered, a constant pull against the life I was building. James became my anchor. When I doubted myself, he'd remind me why I chose marketing, why I kept going. One night, after a long call with Mom left me drained, James took me for a drive. We parked by a lake, the city lights flickering in the distance. "You don't owe them your dreams," he said. I nodded, feeling the truth settle in. With James, I was learning to trust myself, to hold on to the spark I'd found. But deep down, I knew bringing him into my family's world would test everything. Last fall, I brought James home to meet my family. I'd been dating him for over a year, and I was ready to share the one person who made me feel truly valued. We pulled up to my parents' house in Portland, my stomach in knots. I'd warned James about Mom's high standards and Emily's sharp tongue, but he just squeezed my hand and said, "We'll handle it together." His calm steadied me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this dinner would be a test I wasn't prepared for. We sat down to a tense meal, the table heavy with Mom's signature roast and unspoken expectations. Mom started with small talk, her eyes scanning James like he was a puzzle to solve. "So James, what do you do?" she asked, her tone polite but edged with judgment. He answered confidently, explaining his work as a car mechanic, how he loved fixing problems others couldn't. I smiled, proud of his passion. But Mom's face tightened. "A mechanic," she said, her voice dripping with disbelief. "That's hands-on." Dad, sitting across from her, nodded slightly, his expression unreadable. I gripped my fork, sensing the storm brewing. Emily, never one to miss a chance to stir trouble, leaned forward. "You know, my boyfriend Michael Harris runs his own investment firm," she said, her eyes flicking to James. "He's closing deals worth millions." Her smirk was unmistakable, a jab meant to diminish James. I shot her a look, but she just raised an eyebrow, daring me to respond. James stayed calm, shrugging off her comment with a polite nod. "Sounds impressive," he said, keeping his tone even. But I could feel the air growing thicker, the weight of their judgment pressing down. Mom didn't let it go. "Sarah, you're in marketing," she said, cutting into her food. "You need someone ambitious, someone on your level. A mechanic doesn't exactly match that." Her words sliced through me, dismissing James like he was beneath me. I opened my mouth to protest, but Dad chimed in for once. "She's right, Sarah. You've got a bright future. Don't settle for less." His voice was soft but firm, echoing Mom's verdict. I felt my face flush, anger bubbling up. James reached for my hand under the table, his touch grounding me. But I wasn't going to stay silent. "His job doesn't define him," I said, my voice steady despite the heat in my chest. "James is honest, hardworking, and he supports me in ways you never have." The table went quiet, forks pausing midair. Mom's eyes narrowed. "Don't talk to us like that," she snapped. "We've given you everything. You owe us better choices." Emily laughed, a sharp mocking sound. "Oh, come on, Sarah. You're dating a grease monkey. Michael's got a penthouse. What's James got? A toolbox." Her words were venom, and I saw James tense, though he kept his composure. I pushed back. "Emily, you don't get to judge him. You don't even know him." My voice rose, shaking with years of pent-up frustration. Emily rolled her eyes. "I know enough. You're embarrassing yourself." That was it. I stood up, my chair scraping the floor. "James is more family to me than any of you have been," I said, looking from Emily to Mom to Dad. "He respects me. You just want to control me." Mom slammed her hand on the table. "Enough. You're throwing away your future for him. Choose, Sarah. Us or him." Her ultimatum hung in the air, heavy and final. I looked at James, his eyes steady, trusting me to decide. I thought of all the years I'd spent trying to please them, shrinking myself to fit their mold. "I choose James," I said, my voice clear. Mom gasped, Dad shook his head, and Emily scoffed, muttering, "You're delusional." I grabbed James's hand and we walked out, their voices fading behind us. That night I realized their approval wasn't worth losing myself, but I had no idea how much worse it would get. A few months after that explosive dinner, the Christmas party at my parents' house was filled with relatives, and the air was heavy with tension. I'd been dreading it for weeks, knowing Mom, Dad, and Emily would be watching my every move. James and I had made a bold choice just days before. A secret wedding at a small courthouse in Portland. Just the two of us and a witness. We didn't tell anyone, not wanting their judgment to taint our moment. But tonight, I decided it was time to share the truth. My heart pounded as we walked in, James's hand steady in mine. I wore a simple dress, my new ring hidden under a scarf, but I felt like I was stepping into a battlefield. Dinner started quietly, with aunts and uncles chatting over plates of turkey and pie. Mom kept glancing at me, her smile tight, while Dad sipped his wine, avoiding my gaze. Emily sat across from us, her eyes darting between me and James, a smirk playing on her lips. I could feel the weight of their expectations, the same ones I'd fought my whole life. Halfway through the meal I stood up, my hands trembling but my resolve firm. "I have something to say," I announced, my voice cutting through the chatter. All eyes turned to me. "James and I got married last week." I lifted my scarf, revealing the ring, and looked at James, who nodded with quiet pride. The room froze. Then Mom's face turned red, her fork clattering to the plate. "Married?" she hissed, her voice low but venomous. "To him?" Dad's jaw tightened, his knuckles white around his glass. Before I could respond, they both stood, their voices rising in unison. "In our eyes, you're already dead," Mom spat, her words slicing through the crowd. Dad echoed her, his voice cold. "You've thrown your life away, Sarah." The relatives gasped, some whispering, others staring in shock. I felt the air leave my lungs, their words a betrayal sharper than any I'd faced. Emily broke the silence with a sharp laugh, her eyes gleaming with malice. "A secret wedding with James," she said, her voice dripping with scorn. "What was it, a quickie at some rundown courthouse?" You couldn't even afford a real ceremony. Her words mocked our choice, dismissing the love we'd built. James's hand tightened around mine, but he stayed calm, his silence stronger than her taunts. I looked at her, then at Mom and Dad, their faces hard with disgust. Years of their control, their criticism flashed through my mind. Every moment I tried to please them, every time I'd been pushed aside for Emily. This was the final straw. I stood taller, my voice steady despite the pain. Understood, I said, locking eyes with Mom, then Dad, then Emily. The word hung in the air, simple but final. I turned to James, his gaze unwavering, and we walked toward the door. Emily called after me, her tone mocking. Running away already, Sarah? Typical. I didn't look back. Relatives murmured, some pleading for me to stay. But their voices faded as we stepped outside. The cold December air hit my face, but I felt lighter, like a chain had snapped. In the car, James pulled me close. You okay? He asked. I nodded, tears stinging my eyes, but my heart was set. We're done with them, I said. That night I made a choice. I blocked Mom's number, Dad's and Emily's. I deleted their voicemails, their texts, their hold over me. For years I'd carried their expectations, their judgment, hoping for acceptance that never came. Now with James by my side, I was free to choose my own family. Walking away wasn't just about leaving a party. It was about reclaiming my life. I didn't know what lay ahead, but I knew I'd never let them define me again. After the Christmas party, I erased my family's numbers from my phone. Walking away from Mom, Dad, and Emily felt like shedding a heavy coat I'd worn too long. James and I didn't waste time. We found a cozy apartment in downtown Portland. A small but bright space with big windows and a view of the bustling streets below. Moving in together was our first step toward building something new. Something ours. We spent weekends unpacking boxes, laughing over mismatched dishes, and planning our future. For the first time, I wasn't looking over my shoulder waiting for judgment. My career took off in ways I hadn't imagined. I'd been working at a marketing firm for a year, but now I was offered a lead role on a major campaign for a local tech startup. The project was ambitious, a full rebrand with billboards, social media ads, and a launch event. I dove in, sketching ideas late into the night, pitching bold concepts to my team. My boss, a no-nonsense woman with a sharp eye for detail, praised my work. You're killing it, Sarah, she said after I presented a new slogan. The words felt like a bomb, so different from Mom's endless critiques. I poured myself into the campaign, coordinating with designers and meeting tight deadlines. When the client approved our pitch, my team cheered, and I felt a surge of pride I hadn't known in years. One chilly afternoon, I ran into my mother's friend, Susan Clark, at a coffee shop near my office. She spotted me in line and waved me over, her smile warm but cautious. Sarah, it's been a while, she said, her voice gentle. We sat down with our drinks and she asked how I was holding up. I hesitated, unsure if she'd report back to Mom, but her eyes were kind, not prying. I told her about cutting ties after the party, about choosing James. Susan listened, nodding thoughtfully. You did what was right for you, she said. Don't let anyone make you doubt that. Her words hit deep, a reminder that I wasn't alone in my choice. She shared a story about her own struggle with family expectations, urging me to stay strong. You're building something real, she said, squeezing my hand. I left the cafe feeling lighter, her support a quiet anchor. James and I leaned into our life together. He was thriving at the garage, taking on bigger repairs and earning a reputation for his skill. We'd come home after long days, cook simple dinners and talk about everything, our dreams, our fears, the little moments that made us laugh. One night he surprised me with a playlist of songs we'd listened to on our first dates, pulling me into a goofy dance in our living room. This is us, he said, spinning me around. I laughed until my sides hurt, feeling a joy I'd never known with my family. We planned trips, talked about starting a family someday, and saved for a house. Every step felt like a promise to ourselves, a commitment to the life we chose. Work kept me grounded. The campaign launched with a packed event at a downtown venue, where our ads played on a massive screen. Clients shook my hand, praising the bold visuals and catchy taglines. I stood there watching the crowd, realizing I'd built something meaningful without Mom's rules or Emily's taunts. James was there, cheering louder than anyone, his pride in me unmistakable. You're unstoppable, he whispered, his arm around me. For once I believed it. The success wasn't just professional. It was proof I could thrive on my own terms. Susan's words stayed with me, a reminder to hold firm. I didn't miss the weight of my family's expectations, but I sometimes wondered if they'd ever see me differently. James and I didn't dwell on it. We filled our days with work, love and small joys, coffee runs, late-night movies, walks through Portland's snowy streets. Our apartment became a haven, a place where I could be myself without apology. I was no longer the girl who shrank to fit their mold. With James by my side, I was building a life that felt true. One where I defined my own worth. 3 months after the party, Susan called with shocking news. I was in my office reviewing ad mock-ups when her name flashed on my phone. Her voice was heavy, not the warm tone from our coffee shop chat. "Sarah, it's about your family," she said. I braced myself, unsure what to expect. She told me Emily had been duped by Michael, the man she'd bragged about endlessly. He'd convinced her to sink her entire savings, over $60,000, into a surefire investment scheme. It was a scam. The project didn't exist and Michael vanished, leaving Emily with nothing but empty bank accounts and a stack of worthless contracts. Susan's words hit me like a punch. Emily, always so confident, always Mom's favorite, had fallen hard. She'd trusted Michael's charm, his promises of quick wealth, only to learn he'd been conning others too. The news spread through Portland's tight-knit circles, whispers of Emily's bad judgment trailing her like shadows. She'd been so quick to mock James's job, his honesty, but her successful boyfriend had played her for a fool. I felt a flicker of pity, but it faded fast. Emily's taunts, her smirks at my choices, still stung. I thanked Susan and hung up, my mind racing with the weight of it all. The fallout didn't stop with Emily. Susan explained that Mom and Dad had stepped in to bail her out. Emily's debts were crushing: legal fees, unpaid loans, and a lifestyle she couldn't sustain. To cover it, they sold their house, the one they'd poured decades into, the one Mom always boasted about at community events. They moved into a cramped rental on the edge of town, a far cry from their pristine suburban home. Their savings dwindled, and Dad's consulting business took a hit as clients pulled away, wary of the family's tarnished reputation. Portland's social scene, where Mom once held court, turned cold. Friends stopped inviting them to dinners, and their names became synonymous with failure. I sat on my couch that night, processing it all. James listened as I recounted Susan's call, his hand resting on mine. "They made their choices," he said, his voice steady. I nodded, but part of me wondered how it had come to this. Mom and Dad had always put Emily on a pedestal, bankrolling her ambitions while dismissing mine. Now their blind loyalty had cost them everything. I didn't gloat. There was no joy in their downfall, but I felt a quiet clarity. Their judgment, their insistence on controlling my life, had been built on a fragile foundation. Susan called again a week later, her tone softer but urgent. "Your parents want to talk, Sarah," she said. "They're struggling and they miss you." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "They're not the same people you left." I stared at my phone, the screen blurring as her words sank in. Mom and Dad reaching out after everything. I thought of their anger at the party, their cruel words, the years of demands I could never meet. Part of me wanted to answer, to hear them out, but a stronger part held firm. "I'm not ready, Susan," I said, my voice calm but resolute. "Maybe I never will be." She didn't push. "I understand," she said. "You've built something good. Protect it." Her words echoed the strength I'd found with James, the life we were carving out. I thanked her and ended the call, my decision clear. I didn't unblock their numbers or respond to the messages Susan said they'd sent. Their struggles were real, but they weren't mine to fix. I'd spent years carrying their expectations, bending to their rules. Now I was done. James and I talked late into the night, reflecting on what we'd learned. Their downfall wasn't my fault, but it was a consequence of their choices, favoring Emily, dismissing me, clinging to appearances. Portland's gossip didn't reach our apartment, where we were busy building our own world. I focused on my work, landing new clients for the firm, while James took on a promotion at the garage. We were moving forward together, free from the weight of their judgment. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had my own. 5 months after the Christmas party, my doorbell rang insistently. I was in our apartment reviewing campaign notes when the sound jolted me. James glanced at me, his brow furrowed. I opened the door to find Mom, Dad, and Emily standing there, their faces a mix of exhaustion and desperation. "Sarah, we need to talk," Mom said, her voice trembling. Dad nodded, his eyes avoiding mine, while Emily shifted uncomfortably, her usual confidence gone. They begged for forgiveness, their words stumbling over each other. Sorry for the party, for their judgment, for pushing me away. I listened, my heart racing but my resolve steady. I took a breath, looking at each of them. "The dead cannot come back," I said, my voice calm but firm. Their faces fell, Mom's eyes welling up, Dad's jaw tightening, Emily's mouth opening in protest. I didn't wait for a response. I closed the door, the click echoing in the silence. James pulled me into a hug, and I felt the weight of their pleas lift. I'd spent years chasing their approval, but that girl was gone. This was my boundary, my final stand. Life with James was my anchor. We'd settled into our Portland apartment, our days filled with love and purpose. I'd been promoted at the marketing firm, now overseeing multiple campaigns. My latest project, a citywide ad for a nonprofit, won an award my name praised in industry circles. James's garage was thriving too, his reputation growing among clients who valued his skill. We celebrated small victories, dinners we cooked together, weekend hikes, plans for a future we defined. Our happiness wasn't loud, but it was real, built on mutual respect and trust. For Mom, Dad, and Emily, the consequences lingered. Susan had told me they were still struggling, renting a small apartment on Portland's outskirts. Their savings drained from Emily's failed investment. Their social circle had shrunk, old friends avoiding them after the scandal with Michael. Emily, once the center of attention, was now isolated, her charm no match for the gossip that followed her. I didn't wish them harm, but their choices had led them here. Their apologies couldn't erase the years of control, the dismissal of my worth. I learned a hard truth. Setting boundaries is the only way to protect your peace. Family isn't an obligation when it comes with disrespect. Cutting ties wasn't easy, but it freed me to live authentically, to choose who I let in. James showed me what family could be: supportive, not suffocating. I'm stronger now, not because I rejected them, but because I chose myself. To everyone listening, thank you for following my story. It's not just mine. It's a reminder to stand up for your worth. Have you faced tough family dynamics? How do you set boundaries? Share your thoughts below and let's start a conversation about building healthier relationships. Your voice matters, and I'm grateful for your support.